Laden orchestrated it from a cave in Afghanistan or something. And if we had a media worth the name, Problem, Reaction, Solution would collapse. Because at this point, they would investigate the official version, find it was a load of old crap, and they'd report to the public it was a lot of old crap. That's what real journalists do. We don't have many. John Pilger's one, mind, Australian. He's one. And instead, we go official version of events, reported to the public, virtually unquestioned. And it becomes official history without question. At stage 2, you want the public to react with anger, with fear, with outrage, and you want them to say, basically, something must be done. What are they going to do about it? And then those who've created the problem, got that reaction, then change society openly through legislation to offer the solutions to the problems they have themselves covertly created. And that method alone has advanced this agenda through the centuries more than any other technique of manipulation. The 33rd degree of Freemasonry has this Latin motto, ordo ab chaos, order out of chaos, problem, reaction, solution. Create the chaos and then offer a new order, a new world order, which is the code name for this conspiracy. And God, it's coming out their mouths all over the place at the moment, isn't it? We need a new world order. You do surprise me. So, this Second World War, the same families and networks were behind Soviet communism, were behind the United States, were behind Britain and the so-called allies, and they were behind Nazi fascism. They put Hitler in power. They funded Hitler. How did Germany go from the Weimar Republic, where they were taking their wages home in wheelbarrows, such was the inflation, to a war machine that took on Europe? Because it was externally funded by people like the Rockefellers. The Rockefellers funded Adolf Hitler's race purity expert, Ernst Rudin, on a whole floor of a German university to come up with this race purity crap. And it was funded by the Rockefellers in America. Because once you realize that this force is working through all sides, like we've just seen with that image, it suddenly is no longer a contradiction that a so-called American family, they have no allegiance to America, they have allegiance to their agenda, an American family would fund and create the war machine that then took on and killed so many Americans as well as so many other people. It's not a contradiction anymore when you know how the game works. And because they brought these two together, they created a massive global problem which allowed them to offer a massive global solution. All those United Nations, like the League of Nations after the First World War, and all the Bretton Woods Agreement, the World Bank, the IMF, and all this stuff was justified, including the European Union. Let's come together in Europe and we'll stop a war. Let's come together and have a central control of Europe, which we've just fought a war to stop. All came together, justified by stopping war in Europe. And now we have another version of it, which I call no problem reaction solution, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. You don't need even a real problem, you just need the perception of the problem to get the public to support or at least not to efficiently reject what you want to do to change society. And this, now we are facing a presidential version of problem, reaction, solution. So put that in the light, I can see what I'm bloody doing now. I kept looking at my watch and misreading the time. I was very proud of that. I don't want to read the time, really. I want to stay here forever. I'm just getting started. What we've seen in America is presidential problem, reaction, solution. They brought Bush in, just as a front man, fronting up these neoconservative, neocon people that were behind the Bush era and the invasion of Iraq and all this stuff, and Afghanistan. And his job, or that group's job, was to create massive problems, not least foreign wars and stretching them militarily, but also to create massive financial problems towards the end of the Bush administration, which is exactly what they did. And then there's a massive problem, there's great fear and anxiety, and then they bring in the used car salesman with the big smile and the dark eyes and very good at reading teleprompters called Barack Obama. And you know, there were people, I got a little stick when I started talking about Obama and his background a few months ago, because, you know, it was like criticizing Jesus at the time. Not quite so much now, mind. People I thought knew better actually believed that this man could come out of nowhere and, as a genuine man taking the country in a different direction for good for the people, would somehow attract the biggest funding of any presidential candidate in American history. And most of it came from Wall Street. Now, I ask this, do turkeys really vote for Christmas if they are aware that that's what they're doing? No. They funded him because he is just a front man for them. And he's done very well. This was his greatest, you see. Because of the problems of the Bush era, this was his greatest asset. Anybody but Bush. And so what they did was sell this fantasy. This man comes out of the most corrupt political system in America and further afield to Chicago. You cannot prosper in Chicago politics unless you are corrupt and or you will do whatever those behind you say you should do or say. What they did was turn him into an empty screen. And they did it by simply using keywords. I stand for change. Now, that's a good one. Because the way the system works, at any point in time, most people are sick to death of the status quo. So anyone coming along and saying, I stand for change, well, at least we'll have him because we don't like the way things are. It's very powerful. That's what Clinton used to get to power. I stand for change. And stand for hope. Now, hope is a good thing. We must hope. No, we mustn't hope. Hope's in the future that doesn't exist. Hope is always the horse on the carousel that's just a bit in front of yours and you're never going to catch it up. Hope is a holding position from real change. That's what hope is. He's an empty suit. But because at no point did he define in any detail what hope, what change, what something to believe in really meant, because if he did, they say, oh, that's what it means, I'm not having that. Keep it simple. And what they did brilliantly was to create a blank screen on which the American people, or vast numbers of them, projected what hope, something to believe in, and change meant to them. So they turned him into all things to all people. And then once he is elected, well, bugger all that, we've got power now, and everything goes on as before. The rhetoric's different, the words are different, but what is happening is exactly the same as in the Bush era in all the basic things. Change, change, change. It's all mind control. You look at that, and what you are being told on a subconscious level is he stands for change, something we can believe in. And that is there to influence your conscious mind eventually into voting for the guy. This is what Adolf Hitler said. Make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. Make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. It's just the same technique that's been used over and over again. The wolf found that shepherd's clothing worked even better. And that's what he is. Oh, he's such a nice man. I love you, Barack. Well, that's good. Let's love everybody, but let's be streetwise as well. He's just a front man for the gang who funded him in the Patriot Act, this Orwellian abomination. Yes, he's supporting the furtherance and continuance of that and all the rest of it. And what has he done since he got in? Hurl money at the banks. This is the truth. This is what Barack Obama is really about. And more people are seeing that. And even the people with their eyes closed, I don't want to know, shut up, are going to have to face it eventually. This is the guy behind Barack Obama, or one of the key men behind Barack Obama. Zbigniew Brzezinski. who is a massive insider within this network I'm talking about, Jimmy Carter's national security advisor. How ironic, he stands here and contemplates, that Barack Obama is now sending thousands more troops into Afghanistan to overcome the problem. Ah, really? Well, his best mate here, who picked him up in the 80s and with others has brought him through to be president, it was always planned, has gone public some years ago now, 2 or 3 years ago, in a Paris magazine, admitting that when he was Jimmy Carter's national security advisor, he decided that he wanted, in his words, to give the Soviet Union their Vietnam. So what he then did was, own words, he funded and trained what were called freedom fighters, became known as the Mujahideen, in Afghanistan, to start causing trouble for the government in Kabul, the capital, which at that time was a satellite government of the Soviet Union. What he was doing was trying to entice the Soviet Union to, his words, to invade Afghanistan and then become embroiled in a Vietnam-type endless war that they couldn't win, as other people have found in Afghanistan. And that's what the Soviet Union did. And they were there for about 10 years, and never mind the Russians who died, 1 million Afghans died, and this guy thought, well, that's not a problem, own words, because it gave them their Vietnam and brought them down as a superpower. This is how these people think. And now the man who created the Mujahideen, funded and trained them, which then became the Taliban, and the guy Osama bin Laden was brought out of Saudi Arabia to front up that Mujahideen resistance to the Soviet invasion. The man who started all that going, because he's asset, bin Laden, absolutely, totally convinced he's dead. I mean, you know, no one ever talks about him anymore, do they? Isn't it funny? Brzezinski, the man who started it all, is the guy, or one of the key guys behind Obama, who's now saying we've got to put thousands of troops into Afghanistan to stop the Taliban. Have a word with your mate. And Brzezinski talks about this area. He's been talking about this area for a long time. He calls it Eurasia. And he says that to control the world, in effect, in simple terms, you need to control Eurasia. This area of land that includes key places like Afghanistan, Iran, the places around the Caspian Sea, this great area of oil and gas reserves, like Georgia, where they've been having problems recently, Pakistan, and all this area, which so much of the world is now focusing on, is this area of the world going up into Russia. And Brzezinski seems to have a morbid genetic hatred of Russia for some reason. That's what we're seeing. And Henry Kissinger is now being used by Obama, officially anyway, to negotiate stuff with the Russians, which is, you know, it's like sending an atom bomb to a peace conference. And this guy, of course, Henry Kissinger, is one of the most blatant and high-profile manipulators for this Illuminati in the last 40 to 50 years. And Brzezinski, in 1973, with David Rockefeller, set up one of the key organizations in the Illuminati network, at one level anyway, called the Trilateral Commission. That's how much of an insider he is. And this is the network. It's around a secret society called the Round Table. It goes down to the start, just before the start of the 20th century. And these groups, like the Bilderberg Group, the Club of Rome, which manipulates the environmental movement, get to that later, Royal Institute of International Affairs in London, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations in America, the United Nations, all these connect into that secret society. And Brzezinski is a major player to the point where he co-founded the Trilateral Commission. This is the guy behind Barack Obama. And this is what he wrote in 1970, Brzezinski. The technotronic era involves the gradual appearance of a more controlled society. Such a society would be dominated by an elite, unrestrained by traditional values. Soon it will be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance on over every citizen and maintain up-to-date complete files containing even the most personal information about the citizen. These files will be subject to instantaneous retrieval by the authorities. 1970. This has been planned for a long, long time, which is unfolding apparently spontaneously now. And when you look at Obama's policies, all you need to do is look at Brzezinski's books before anyone had heard of Obama. This is what he wrote in a book before Obama ran for president. Needed social reassessment can be encouraged by deliberate civic education that stresses the notion of service to a higher cause than oneself. As some have occasionally urged, a major step in that direction would be the adoption of an obligatory period of national service for every young adult, perhaps involving a variety of congressionally approved domestic or foreign good works. Barack Obama. Policy. Obama will call on citizens of all ages to serve America by developing a plan to require 50 hours of community service in middle school and high school and 100 hours of community service in college every year. Watch this in Australia. I don't know if they're trying to do this here, but they will, because they're talking about it now in Britain, and they want this everywhere. This is the policy continued, Obama's policy. We cannot continue to rely on our military in order to achieve the national security objective we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded. They want to create in every country civilian security networks to police the people policing the people, and they'll start to suggest it everywhere. He's just the guy who's triggering it in America, and because of his worldwide kind of fame, he has an ability to sell it in other countries as well. So it's not just Brzezinski. This guy, George Soros, is a notorious Illuminati manipulator, not least in financial terms, and he's one of the major funders and backers of Obama as well. And his networks were behind the spontaneous public revolutions in Ukraine and Georgia, after which, like in Georgia, Brzezinski and Soros put their puppet guy, this guy Saakashvili, on the throne as president. He's also fundamentally connected to this guy, Tony Rezko, who's currently in jail for corruption. They did a land deal together, and he was one of the major funders of his political career. And he was put in jail for so controlling the political system of Chicago that when business people wanted to do business with the state, he was asking for them to pay him a fee to allow them to do work and business with the state when he officially had nothing to do with the state. He's in prison for it now. These are the kind of people Obama's around. This guy, William Ayers, Bill Ayers, was, as admitted, being involved in doing terrorist bombing through a group called the Weathermen a few decades ago, back in the 60s it was, and Obama's political career was started in this guy's house with another associate from the Weather Underground that was back in the 60s planting bombs in America. He's fundamentally connected to this organization called Acorn, which is now being prosecuted by a stream of American states for producing fake representations for voting registrations, and of course the people they were falsely voting would be falsely voting for him, and he's fundamentally connected to them. It's a deeply corrupt organization, and appropriately Obama is closely connected to it because he's actually a deeply corrupt man. That's how you prosper in Chicago. He goes with the territory. And the other thing, I wonder if the Keystones are writing this down. You write this down, because where I'm going to now. Around, because it's about time someone bloody said it. There is a political system, I'm not talking about Jewish people, it's not the same thing. There is a political system orchestrated, created and controlled to this day by the Rothschilds called Zionism. It is a tyrannical system which has no mercy on anyone that gets in its way. The Obama administration and around Obama is awash with people who are of the Zionist persuasion. His chief of staff at the White House is Rahm Emanuel, who has served in the Israeli army. He's an American. What's going on? And his father was involved in a notorious terrorist group called Irgun, which, along with other terrorist groups, bombed Israel into existence in 1948. I don't think there is going to be fair play on American policy in the Middle East. I don't feel it. And I would emphasize this because this is never publicized. Zionism is a political system. It is not a race. And there are many, many Jewish people, look at these alone, who fundamentally oppose Zionism. You know, it's like saying the Liberal Party in Australia is the American people. All right, it's a bit more than that, but it's along the same line. It is the Australian people. Or the Labour Party is the Australian people. No, it's not. It's a political system, a political belief. And what they've done brilliantly is to equate a political belief with a race, so when you challenge the political belief and what it does, you are called a racist. I don't care. It's about time somebody talked about this stuff and stopped being frightened of it. And if people realized Zionism is the creation of the Rothschild family, who are a major, major Illuminati family, along with many others, and interact with very closely in many ways with the Rockefellers. It was the Rothschilds who spent millions, £6 million pounds back in the 50s to build the Knesset, the Israeli parliament. It was the Rothschilds who built the Supreme Court in Jerusalem with all its massive Illuminati symbolism, which is well shown on the internet. This is a fiefdom of the Rothschilds, and Zionism has caused more mayhem and strife for Jewish people as anybody else. Why is there no peace in Israel? Because for Jewish people as well as Palestinians, because Zionism doesn't want it. That's why. Because there are plans to use Israel and use the Jewish people in Israel to manifest a massive conflict which will lead to a third world war, which is what these guys are after. And Rahm Emanuel is the man who pulls the strings of Barack Obama, along with this guy, another Zionist, called David Axelrod. He was the guy that ran the whole of, masterminded the whole of the election campaign, both against Hillary Clinton and against John McCain. And it's Axelrod that is responsible for the words that appear on the teleprompter screens that Barack Obama reads. And he reads them so robot-like in terms of not having a thought in his head, that last week, maybe 10 days ago, he thanked himself for inviting everybody to a reception because someone else's speech was on the teleprompter instead of his by mistake. It was the Irish Prime Minister was there on St. Patrick's Day. There, people are starting to call him the teleprompter president. It's so bloody obvious. That's why he never looks ahead. It's right, left, because that's where the screens are. Hello, Barack, over here. Sorry, I'm reading. And this is why you're getting the policy of Obama saying Palestinian refugees belong to their own state and do not have a literal right to return to Israel. He's talking about the people who fled, 800,000 of them, at the time of the bombing Israel into existence in 1948, and have never allowed to come back to their own land. People forget about this. White phosphorus, pepper bombing, the most crowded piece of land on the planet, the Gaza Strip. We don't target civilians. We just bomb where they live. Unbelievable. We're just protecting ourselves. No, it's a slaughter. And now I'm hearing, oh, there's a lot of anti-Israeli sentiment. Do you know something? I have a way around that. Stop slaughtering innocent people from the sky, okay? End of story. And it'll go away. And this is important. This is important for what's planned to come. We now have a situation in Israel where the extreme of the extreme has taken the reins of power. Benjamin Netanyahu, he's talked about, these are his words summarized, he wants a violent reoccupation of Gaza to liquidate its elected government. And he pledges to thwart the Iranian threat once and for all. He's now got this guy, Lieberman, as his foreign minister, and this man's so far right, he topples over, right? And he's got Barak as the defense minister in this new government, and he was defense minister that oversaw the pepper bombing of the Gaza Strip. And this is Martin van Creveld. He's a well-known historian in Israel, and this is what he said publicly. We possess several hundred atomic warheads and rockets and can launch them at targets in all directions, perhaps even at Rome. Most European capitals are targets for our Air Force. We have the capability to take the world down with us, and I can assure you that that will happen before Israel goes under. They have a policy of not saying if they've got nuclear weapons or they haven't. They just don't talk about it. And a guy called Mordecai Vanunu, a wonderful Israeli man, went to jail for, I think it was 18 years, for exposing the fact publicly that they did have nuclear weapons. And now we've got this thing, oh, Iran's going to have nuclear weapons. What? The idea, and we're seeing it almost complete now, from the start was to drive out the Palestinian people, not be at one with them, not share power with them, not share the land with them. The green bits are Palestinian land over the period of time up to the year 2000, and it's gone on since then. As illegal settlements are put in Palestinian land, and one of the people that lives in an illegal settlement is Lieberman. As an Australian newspaper said this week, he must be the only foreign minister in the world who doesn't actually live within the borders of his own country. And the Middle East policy in Obama's administration is by Bilderberg, George Mitchell, Bilderberg, Council on Foreign Relations, by the notorious little Kissinger, Richard Holbrooke, who played a major part in breaking up the former Yugoslavia in wars, etc., so it could be absorbed into NATO and the European Union, which it is being now. He's Bilderberg Group, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission. He's now in charge of Pakistan-Afghanistan policy. And this man, who is an arch-Zionist called Dennis Ross, he's now in charge of Iran policy. What it's building to is an effort, and Brzezinski is behind this among many others, to create a conflict out of the Middle East, and in this area we're looking at, to bring about a third world war. And the third world war will be, and this was been written about in the past, that there were going to be 3 world wars to bring this new world order into being, a war that would finish off the superpowers and bring the whole world under the control of a world government, which will then dictate to every country. And the personnel are in place. We're hearing, oh, he's a good guy because he's closing Guantanamo. Well, he's going to close it in a year. But I won't go through this because of time, but John Pilger here brilliantly exposes the fact that Barack Obama has actually fundamentally changed nothing. It's all rhetoric, as he said. The man of change is changing little. That ought to be front page news from Washington, but it isn't. And I have a golden rule with Obama. Again, that Hitler quote, but I have a golden rule with Obama. Ignore the words and watch the actions. If you listen to the words, you can get caught that there's change going on and he's different. Watch the actions and you'll see that there is nothing. And just to confirm that nothing has changed, there you go. Where would world politics be without Bono, eh? Where would they be? So we have this secret agenda, and we have the movie, which is just explaining away the secret agenda. And the money, finance, is fundamentally one of these problem reaction solutions that we are now looking at. This crisis was brought about, engineered by, not least, this guy, Alan Greenspan, who was head of the Federal Reserve, Central Bank of America, but actually it's a private cartel of banks, nothing to do with the government in truth. And from the end of the kind of Reagan administration, right through Father Bush, right through the two Clintons, and through most of Boy Bush, this guy was head of the Federal Reserve. And he led a campaign which was mirrored around the world because of this transnational corporation I'm talking about, which took away all credible regulation on the banks and financial institutions doing what the hell they bloody liked. And it was purposely created to create enormous amounts of debt. And you could be a monkey and get a mortgage at one point. And the idea was then, when the debt had reached massive proportions, unmanageable proportions, then you crash the system. Because what you want is a massive problem which you can then add endless solutions to, including the introduction eventually, and we're going there, of a world central bank to dictate to all global finance. And that's what we've been doing all these years, watching the game and all the rest of it. We've just been pulled in on the fishing line to get in more and more debt so the control system can play out. And this guy, Henry Paulson, who was Treasury Secretary when the crash happened during the end of the Bush administration, he came from Goldman Sachs in 2006, and then as to save the banking system, to save the economy, orchestrated vast amounts of money to end up in the coffers of Goldman Sachs. All this money has been fired at the banks, disappeared. It's not changed things in any credible way. And again, business as usual. Bush justifying the giving the money to the banks. The government's top economists, experts warn that without immediate action by Congress, America could slip into financial panic and a distressing scenario would unfold. More banks could fail, including some in your community. The stock market would drop even more, which would reduce the value of your retirement account. The value of your home could plummet. Foreclosures would rise dramatically. And if you own a business or a farm, you'd find it harder and harder, expensive to get credit. More businesses will close their doors and millions of Americans could lose their jobs. God bless America. Then Obama comes in, change, when he says we want even more money at the banks. Economists across the spectrum have warned that if we don't act immediately, millions more jobs will be lost and national unemployment rates will approach double digits. More people will lose their homes and their health care, and our nation will sink into a crisis that at some point may be unable to be reversed. Different mask, same face. Be afraid, be very afraid. The big bad monster's coming now that we've invented him. Economic crisis, and it's just a puppet. And his economic team, people like Larry Summers, Paul Volcker, Tim Geithner, they're straight from the very institutions that created the crisis, and they've been placed in positions to solve the crisis, which means giving more and more money to the banks that they represent, trillions of dollars. And they're talking about it being the bigger crisis than the 1930s. In many ways, on many levels, I think that's absolutely right. What they want, and I've been saying this since November now, what they want, and we're two-thirds there, don't want to be the bringer of bad news, but, let's face it, was to crash the economy first of all and create a massive problem. Stage two is for those that have created the problem to come into government and hurl enormous amounts of cuckoo land money at the problem, because what they wanted to do in stage two is empty the weapons of government to respond to the crisis. And once those weapons, those guns have been emptied in terms of response possibilities, then they want to crash it here and crash it in a way that there can be no government response. They want to create absolute chaos on so many levels so that the people say, save us, do something. And the do something will bring in this centralized, global, fascist, Orwellian state. This, as a result of it. Not just a financial crisis, they want wars as well. They want to, first of all, destroy America, because if you want a world government, then you can't have superpowers in the world that can say no to the world government financially and militarily. So as I've been saying for years now, what we're seeing in America is using America to destroy America. It's being destroyed militarily because it's fighting on so many fronts, and financially, I was there for 2 months recently. That country is on the brink of financial catastrophe. Not just a crisis, catastrophe with what's going on there, which has not hit the public arena yet. And the other thing they want in problem, reaction, solution is people to riot and be violent in response to what's going on, because then they've got a problem that they can offer the solution to, which is increases in the police state to meet the problem of violent reaction of the public to the problems they've created, and also to justify putting people into these concentration camps, you can only call them, holding centers they're called, which exist all over the world, particularly in America, under an organization called FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. Again, people around the conspiracy research world have been talking about this now for 10 years, and it's coming to pass. And I don't believe in violence. I will not be violent. I will not be violent. I don't care what the situation is. I do want to be violent. I'm not going to add my energy to that crap. But a lot of people would be in response to this, and to do that, you need to get rid of their guns. That's why when Hitler came in, he wanted to disarm the population, because then a big problem of resistance had gone. It's Rahm Emanuel that is now leading the campaign in America to take away more and more guns from the population, because he knows that an armed population prepared to use them in certain situations makes them much more difficult to control. But I would say this, Martin Luther King, the limitation of riots, moral questions aside, is that they cannot win, and their participants know it. Hence, rioting is not revolutionary but reactionary, because it invites defeat. It involves an emotional catharsis, but it must be followed by a sense of futility. And what we need is not to riot, not to be violent, not even to go in mass protests. So be my guest if people want to do that. But they're not frightened of protests, this gang. They're terrified of us not complying with our own enslavement. And when we stop doing that, they've lost their power. No violence necessary. They want us to be violent. Inside job, problem, reaction, solution, 9/11. Won't go into all that now, but it's been well documented. But another classic one. And interestingly, 1997, the Grand Chessboard, Brzezinski book. Moreover, as America becomes an increasingly multicultural society, it may find it more difficult to fashion a consensus on foreign policy issues, except in the circumstances of a truly massive and widely perceived direct external threat. What was it? 3 years later? 4 years later? Thank you. Massive external threat, which has justified so much. I love that. So David Dees is a great artist. Anything like this in this presentation comes from David Dees, a brilliant artist who portrays real powerful statements in pictures like this. Jet fuel, that's a good one. These are buildings, by the way, in other parts of the world that burned incredibly more intensely than the Twin Towers, and none of them fell. That one seems to be falling, but it's not. It's the way the building is actually built. There you go. There you go. Put that where I can see it. Okay, we're not doing bad. There you go. Reichstag fire, which Hitler did. Blamed someone else for it, justified the takeover of the state as a result of it. Same thing, problem, reaction, solution. Again, Saddam Hussein was the guy. We're going to go into Iraq because of Saddam Hussein. This is Donald Rumsfeld, the defense secretary at the time of the invasion of Iraq, meeting Saddam Hussein in 1983 to arrange for Reagan-Bush administration to ship chemical and biological weapons for use against the Iranians. This is a An American mainstream newspaper report from 2002. Donald Rumsfeld, the US Defense Secretary and one of the most strident critics of Saddam Hussein, met the Iraqi president in 1983 to ease the way for US companies to sell biological and chemical weapons, including anthrax and bubonic plague cultures, according to newly declassified government documents. Again and again, you see people creating the problem who then become the people to solve the problem. He was on the board of a European engineering giant called ABB in 2000 when they sold nuclear equipment to North Korea. He then becomes defense secretary and says North Korea is a danger because it's got nuclear equipment. Alongside problem, reaction, solution, what I call the totalitarian tiptoe. Very simple. You're going there to Z, but you're at A. And if you go in one leap, you know the change is going to be so vast, people are going to say, what's going on? So you go in as big a jump as you can, but you try not too big a jump that so many people will start to ask questions. And each jump is promoted and projected as unconnected to all the others. That's how the European Union, a centralized dictatorship now, was totalitarian tiptoed out of a free trade area. 75% of laws in Britain now originate in the European Union. And the European Union pass a law, a British Parliament or any other European Parliament pass a law, doesn't matter, that one takes precedent. They want the same in America with the North American Union, which Obama is going to be pushing. Fascism, you really think it would be this obvious. The stepping stone approach is what's got us this far, where so many stepping stones have now been made that it is becoming obvious to anyone with a mind. I'll quickly go through this because there's so much to get through, but it's like I say, I wish I had hours. The other coordinate is to understand that they want people to be a believer. They want people to believe in something, because once you have a belief system that is rigid, then you become less of a problem. They want religious belief systems, political belief systems, racial belief systems, self-identity belief systems, anything that puts you in a prison of the mind, because you'll then filter through this process of the way the neurons fire in the brain, you will filter reality through the belief system. Religions. In the end, religions are invariably, the major religions are worshipping the same force. It's not explained like that, but that's what goes on. Again, out of Atlantis and Lemuria, and then those civilizations that followed, the worshipping of the moon goddess and the sun god, the worshipping of the moon and the sun, was prevalent. And it manifested in various religions, not least from this part of the world, which, if you think about it, is the religion factory. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, all came out of this part of the world, these major religions. And when you strip them down, they are invariably sun and moon worshipping religions. So in Babylon, they worshipped the Queen Semiramis, the sun goddess, Nimrod, known as Baal or Bel, the sun god, and Tammuz, who was the son, the virgin-born son of the moon goddess and the sun god. Tammuz later became known as Jesus in the Christian stories. And when this Babylonian trinity was taken to Rome, as the bloodlines moved to Rome and founded the Christian church, they changed the names, but basically the same religion remained. This is a depiction of the moon goddess and the sun god, the star, the sun there, which is an original depiction from Ur in what is now Iraq, Sumer, Babylon, from 2000 BC. And this is the international symbol of Islam to this day. When you get deeper into it, these are all different masks, again, on the same face of the moon and sun religions. This is Mormonism. In America, again, the sun and moon symbolism is all over their symbols in Salt Lake City, etc. So when you see Mother Mary and Jesus, what you're looking at is a depiction of Queen Semiramis, the goddess of Babylon, and Nimrod stroke Tammuz, because they said that Nimrod when he died, became the sun god Baal and impregnated Semiramis with the rays of the sun. That's where the virgin birth comes from. And she gave birth to the reincarnation of Nimrod, which became known as Tammuz. And that's why in Christianity they talk about father and son being one, because that comes from the Babylonian symbolism of that. That's where Isis, the virgin mother of Egypt, and Horus, the sun in Egypt, comes from. It's the same recurring themes, and all across the world, the mother, the virgin mother, and the baby religions follow, and they all come from the same source, and because they project it in a different way, people think that they're different religions, but they're the same basic religion. Consciousness, I mean, this is the point I would stress. Consciousness doesn't do religion. Mind does religion. And this is an ancient depiction of Queen Semiramis, the goddess of Babylon, and I think I've seen her somewhere else before. The Statue of Liberty, a mirror depiction of Queen Semiramis, was given to New York by French Freemasons in Paris who knew exactly what it represented, the goddess of Babylon. And there you go, and there's the mirror image of the Statue of Liberty on an island in the River Seine in Paris to this day. The goddess of the French Republic, same thing. The goddess Freedom on the top of the Capitol building, same thing. The goddess Columbia, the goddess of the District of Columbia, same thing. In the Vatican, because, of course, the Roman Church is the Church of Babylon relocated, and they use different names for the same stories, they depicted Semiramis in Babylon as a dove, and, of course, Nimrod was the sun, and this is, you see in the Vatican, the dove and the sun, that's Semiramis and Nimrod, same thing. So Nimrod was the sun god, and you see him all over the place as well. The symbol of Nimrod in Babylon was the flame or the lighted torch. And that's why the Statue of Liberty is holding a lighted torch, the torch of Nimrod, and he's actually standing, when you see from above, on a depiction of the sun. And that, you see, the way they manipulate reality and sense of reality, Americans, understandably, look to the Statue of Liberty as a symbol of their freedom when it's a symbol of their enslavement. Same thing, holding Nimrod. And this is an exact and massive depiction of the flame held by the Statue of Liberty, and that's on top of the Pont d'Alma tunnel, and that's now where people take their tributes to Princess Diana, who died underneath it. Another way that Nimrod was depicted was as Dagon, the fish god. This is an original depiction from thousands of years ago, and that's just a kind of, obviously, a knocked-up symbol of it. And that's why we have this. Dagon, the fish god, the mitre. It's all the same symbolism of symbolizing Nimrod. The obelisks you find all over the place. The biggest obelisk in the world is the Washington Memorial opposite the White House. That's the penis of Nimrod Osiris, going back to that symbolism of the Credo necklace too. Nimrod aircraft, all the same things. And the religions were taken across the world and expanded, and they became the religious network that we have today, which ironically fight each other when actually they're all different masks on the same face, which ultimately connect into the same network. And same with the New Age. So much of the New Age is just the same manipulation. I call the New Age the last cul-de-sac before the gold mine. People who've rejected mainstream religion and rejected this world is all there is science, and are looking into things of vibration and stuff like that and spirituality in another way, you've got to stop them, get into the gold mine. So you want a cul-de-sac to get them into, and it's become known as the New Age. And they also worship, and again, anything to do with this network is always, reptilian brain, hierarchical. And so we have hierarchical structures of power within the New Age structure of beings and entities and great white brotherhoods. It's all hierarchy. Consciousness doesn't do hierarchy. Mind does hierarchy. If you're into hierarchy, you're in mind, you're not in consciousness. Simple things. You can see whether it's conscious or not. And I love that the New Age Jesus, Sananda, looks exactly like the Jesus depicted by the Renaissance painters who hadn't got a clue what he bloody looked like anyway. So the idea is to use religion to keep people in mind and stop them connecting to consciousness. Because when you start talking about consciousness and the way consciousness sees the world, religions go, you can't say that, that's the devil. And all the rest of it, and fright people into acquiescing to rules and regulations of these religions. And again, in the end, all these religions, you go through them, and you're providing sustenance, energetic sustenance for the same entities. The same entities. It's a very true saying. Energy goes where attention goes, and worship is a really focused form of attention. And so when we're in worship, focusing on a deity, we might think the deity represents something, but it represents something else. Attention goes where, or energy flows where attention goes. 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 I mean, what an image for a religion to focus on. Someone being tortured. What are we doing? Let's think about it. What an image to focus a religion on. And like I say, religion is mind. That's why it's so schism-like, fractured. And they create them so they can play them off against each other. Trust Jesus. We know the truth. No, Judaism knows the truth. No, Islam knows the truth. No, this knows the truth. Play them off against each other. It's a divide and rule to put people in so many ways in that state. Religion has played a massive, massive part in this, cutting off the channels to consciousness. Oh, God, I wish I had lots of time. Okay. Coordinate. Secret society network and the religions worship the same gods because the same force controls the secret society network that controls the religions ultimately. So you have the Eye of Ra, which you see over and over again in the symbolism of the secret societies and the corporations they control. Again, that's the Vatican. There you see the Freemasonry thing. And that's in a Freemasons lodge in Boston. Same thing, it's the rising sun. This is the supreme headquarters of the 33rd degree in Washington, D.C., just down from the White House. And again, the rising sun symbol of the Illuminati and the secret society network. And that's why above the Downing Street door, you have that symbol, which is the symbol of the rising sun. We control Downing Street. That's the sun chair of George Washington, the first president of the United States, a high Freemason, and again, the same symbolism. And that's what you get on NBC News. That's the symbolism of that. That's the sun on a Boston Freemasonry lodge. Worship of the sun. This is the Mother Lodge of Freemasonry in London, from which Freemasonry went out across the colonies, Australia and America and all the rest of it, and they located it in Great Queen Street, which was one of the names in Babylon for Queen Semiramis, the moon goddess, Great Queen. And so when they created Virginia, and they said it was named after the Virgin Queen, Queen Elizabeth I, who was no more a virgin than Madonna, by the way, it's just a cover story. Virginia was named after the Virgin Queen of Babylon, Semiramis. And this is how they do it, by having these pyramids within pyramids, which mirror the secret society structure of levels of degree. And in the end, these secret societies that we know, like Freemasons and all these others, they feed a very chosen select few into another pyramid that is never talked about and is denied to exist, which is where the real action is, what I call the Illuminati pyramid, and that's where the real action and power is. You can also symbolize it as a spider's web. The spider at the center is where the control system comes out of. You never see that. You never see those people. And in the end, they connect into these other dimensions of reptilian entities. Each of these strands represents an organization. The closer the strand is, the organization is to the spider, the more exclusive it is. And often if you get close enough to the spider, it doesn't even have a name, because it's very difficult to lock into something that doesn't have a name. As you come out, you're starting to hit things like Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, which interact directly with mainstream society. But all of these organizations, they get their orders and agenda from the spider, and so they work as one unit. And they've done that to the world as a result. The Jesuits are a major spider, close to the spider organization. That's the Black Pope, as they call him, the head of the Jesuits currently, Adolfo Nicolas, who more power than the real Pope. And so many politicians like these people, from Pierre Trudeau in Canada and Robert Mugabe and Clinton and these other people, John Kerry, are connected into the Jesuits. So is this guy, Joe Biden, the vice president currently. Another major secret societies are the Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitaller of St. John of Jerusalem here, which is now known today as the Knights of Malta, and have their headquarters in Rome. These are the Knights Templar, and they control the City of London financial district and create mayhem as a result. And this is the temple area where they control law from, and this is the original Templar church that was made famous recently by the Da Vinci Code. And also, the Illuminati connect into Satanism. That's why so many of these famous people in the world take part in satanic ritual and human sacrifice and all this stuff, because these bloodlines have right the way through history, and they keep going and doing it. At one time they did it openly when they could, but now it's done extremely covertly and through this secret society network that it connects into, but it has its own structure also. And what they're doing is creating, this guy Vlad Dracul, by the way, who is famous for spearing people and impaling people and drinking their blood, back I think it was the 15th century in what is now Romania, and he was the inspiration of the Dracula stories, and he was and his family were key members of an organization called the Royal Court of the Dragon, or the Order of the Dragon, which actually goes back to ancient Egypt, at least to ancient Egypt. And this guy's sister comes through directly to the Mary of Teck, who is the present Queen of England's grandmother. She is a direct descendant of Vlad Dracul's sister, and I'm not surprised. Things like this is kind of from a B-movie, and all this stuff that you see, this actually goes on. One of the things that has, and you see it all around the world in history, and often connected to dragons, but not always, the thing that I found one of the hardest things to cope with originally when I came across it is not just that children are sacrificed in these rituals by these famous people and lots of not so famous people, or that child abuse is going on. What staggered me is the scale of it. It is extraordinary. And sometimes it's depicted too close to the truth, like in this Stanley Kubrick movie, Eyes Wide Shut, where he understated it, actually, but he included in this movie, and he died, actually, very soon after it was seen by the powers that be, of a heart attack. And I know from someone who's writing a biography of Stanley Kubrick in America that 15 minutes of it were removed after he died. So what did that say? These rituals with the rich and famous in the stately homes and other places are not going on every now and again here and there. They're going on all over the world, including Australia. And my understanding is Victoria is one of the centres for it in Australia, and it involves some very well-known people in this area, as it does everywhere, because this is a global thing. And one of the things they're doing in these rituals, and I've talked to people who've taken part in them, often against their will, what they're doing is they're creating an energy bridge between the entities, the reptilian entities and other entities that operate just outside visible light. The rituals are there to create an energetic bridge which allows them to enter this dimension and be seen and to be interacted with. And one of the ways is that symbol you see in Satanism, which is the pentagram with a circle round it, and other symbols, because we see them as symbols, but they have an effect on the energy field. If you could see it on an energetic level, you would see something very different that symbol is, geometrical symbol is creating, and it's through these symbols that they bring them through energetically into this dimension and interact with them. And the hierarchy of Satanism, hierarchy of Illuminati, is based on the power of the demonic entities, as people call them, that you allow to take over your body. This is where the whole thing comes from of selling your soul to the devil. You get the power and the prestige within this world up to a point, but you give yourself over to these demonic entities before you get that power. And then after you pass through, you become controlled by these entities when you leave the body. Now, this is in Sydney. I found this years ago. I dropped off my seat. This is a war memorial for the people who died in the 2 world wars, and this is the symbol in the middle of it, someone being sacrificed over an image of the sun. This symbolism is all over the place. Bohemian Grove, where they worship a 40-foot stone owl, which is symbolic of Queen Semiramis. This is an original Babylonian depiction of Queen Semiramis, and she's famous for being connected to owls. And there you have an owl on the street plan around the Capitol building in Washington. And if you look at another level of it, it's standing in the street plan on a pyramid. And this is symbolic of Queen Semiramis, with the Capitol building, American politics in its belly. And like I say, this is a global thing. This is Canberra, with the Capitol building at the top, the Parliament building at the top. Because the same force is controlling this country as is controlling America and Britain and all of them. So they use the same symbolism if you look for it. And these people, famous people, top people in banking, business, politics, presidents, go to Bohemian Grove in Northern California and worship this stone owl, Semiramis. You couldn't make it up. This is a picture from Bohemian Grove in 1957. That's a guy called Glenn Seaborg who developed plutonium. Cheers, Glenn. And there, at the time, 1957, is a B-movie actor called Ronald Reagan. And here's a career politician called Richard Nixon, just about to take Kennedy on in the 1960 election. Both Bohemian Grove members, and both go on to be presidents of the United States, no matter what their background. Presidents, like in every other country, are not selected by ballot. They are, or elected by ballot. They're selected by blood and by Illuminati and networks.